The great chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with excitement. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the massive hall, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Some floated in breathing apparatus, others stood on multiple legs, and a few hung from the ceiling on silken threads. But today, they all shared the same emotion, satisfaction. At the center of the chamber sat the human delegation, 5 individuals in simple gray uniforms looking small and plain compared to the exotic aliens around them. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat straight in her chair, her dark eyes scanning the faces of those who had once called themselves allies. The Zalani representative, Kethvar, rose from his crystal platform. His blue skin shimmered as he spoke, his voice carrying the authority of one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations. "We are here today to address the human problem," he announced. "For too long, this council has tolerated their aggressive behavior. No more." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The insect-like Vorthak clicked their mandibles in approval. The gas-breathing Nethys pulsed their approval lights. Even the peaceful tree-like Sylvans swayed in agreement. "The humans have expanded too fast," continued Kethvar. "They build military ships when they should build hospitals. They establish bases on every world they touch. They speak of peace but prepare for war." Sarah Chen stood slowly. The chamber fell silent. Despite being one of the smallest beings present, something about her commanded attention. "May I respond to these charges?" she asked. Kethvar waved a dismissive hand. "Speak, human. Let the council hear your justification for your species' crimes." Chen walked to the center of the chamber. Her voice was calm but carried clearly to every corner of the vast space. "We have built ships because space is dangerous. We have established bases because our people need protection. We prepare for war because we have seen what happens to those who do not." "Lies," screeched the Vorthak delegate, its translator making its voice sound like grinding metal. "What enemies do you speak of?" "The galaxy has been at peace for 300 years. Peace in the core worlds," Chen replied. "But you do not patrol the rim. You do not watch the dark spaces between stars. You do not see what we have seen." The Nethys representative's gas sac pulsed with different colors, each one expressing doubt. "More human paranoia. You see threats where none exist. You create enemies from shadows." Chen's jaw tightened slightly. "We have tried to share our intelligence. We have warned about signs of movement in the outer rim. We have offered to show you our data. Each time you have dismissed us as warmongers, and because that is what you are." Kethavar's voice echoed through the chamber. "Your species is barely 200 years old in galactic terms. You know nothing of civilized behavior. You think with your weapons instead of your minds." Other delegates began speaking at once. The chamber filled with accusations in dozens of languages. The humans were too violent, too aggressive, too quick to fight. They did not understand the sophisticated ways of galactic politics. They were a danger to the peace that had lasted for centuries. Chen waited for the noise to die down. When she spoke again, her voice was even quieter than before. "You are making a mistake." "The only mistake," Kethvar said, "was allowing your species into this council in the first place." "That ends today," the formal vote began. One by one, species after species voted to expel humanity from the Galactic Council. The Zalani voted yes with obvious pleasure. The Vorthak clicked their approval. The Nethys flashed agreement. Even species that had once traded with humans voted against them. When the final tally was announced, it was overwhelming. 47 species voted for expulsion. Only 3 abstained. None voted against. "By the authority of this council," Kethvar announced, "humanity is hereby expelled from the galactic community. You have 30 standard days to remove all humans from council space. All human colonies in council territory must be evacuated. All human military assets must be withdrawn." Chen nodded slowly. "And our trade agreements? Our research partnerships? Our mutual defense treaties?" "Terminated," said the Vorthak delegate with obvious satisfaction. "Your species will be treated as any other non-council entity. You will have no special access to council space or resources." "I see." Chen turned to address the entire chamber. "Before we leave, I want to make something very clear. We did not build our fleets to conquer you. We did not establish our bases to threaten you. We did not prepare for war because we wanted to fight you." The chamber was silent now. Every alien eye, sensor, and optical organ focused on the small human woman. "We did these things to protect you," Chen continued. For 50 years we have stood watch in the places you were afraid to go. We have faced things you refused to believe existed. We have kept you safe while you called us warmongers. Kethavar laughed, a sound like crystal bells. Protect us from what? Your own imagination? Chen looked directly at him. You will find out soon enough. She turned to her delegation. We're done here. As the humans walked toward the exit, the aliens began celebrating. The Vorthak made their victory clicking sounds. The Nethys flashed in patterns of joy. Several species began planning how to divide up the soon-to-be empty human territories. At last, Kethvar said to his aide, the galaxy can return to proper civilization. No more human aggression, no more military buildups, no more paranoid warnings about imaginary threats. His aide, a younger Zilani named Sevtar, watched the humans leave. Sir, what if they were telling the truth? What if there really are threats out there? Kethvar's laugh echoed through the chamber. My dear Sevtar, we have kept peace for 300 years without human help. We have sophisticated diplomacy, advanced technology, and civilized minds. What could possibly threaten us that we cannot handle? As the chamber doors closed behind the human delegation, Chen stopped and looked back one last time. Her expression was unreadable, but something in her eyes made young Sevtar shiver despite the chamber's warmth. Outside in the corridor, Admiral Marcus Torres waited for Chen. His weathered face showed no emotion as she approached. Well, he asked. It's done, Chen replied. They voted us out. 47-0, Torres nodded grimly. I'll begin the withdrawal procedures. 30 days should be enough. Make it 25, Chen said. I want to be gone before they start having second thoughts. And our contingency plans? Chen was quiet for a moment. Activate them all. If they want us gone, we'll be gone. But we'll take everything useful with us. They made their choice. Now they can live with the consequences. As they walked toward their ship, Torres asked the question that had been bothering him. What about the outer rim stations? The monitoring posts? The early warning networks? Chen's expression hardened. Abandoned. All of them. If the Council doesn't want our protection, they won't get it. We'll see how long their peace lasts without someone watching the dark. Behind them, the celebration in the Council chamber continued. The aliens toasted their victory and planned their bright future. None of them noticed the small group of humans boarding their ship with quiet efficiency. None of them saw the data. Packets being transmitted to human colonies throughout the galaxy, and none of them paid attention to the automated message that began broadcasting from the Yi, abandoned human monitoring stations in the outer rim. Warning. Human protection withdrawn. Systems going dark. Good luck. The humans were leaving. The Council had won. They would soon discover that winning and surviving were two very different things. The human colony of New Terra buzzed with activity that seemed almost too organized to be real. Ships of all sizes moved in perfect formation, loading supplies and people with clockwork precision. What should have been chaos looked like a carefully planned dance. Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the observation deck of the command station, watching his people work. In just 10 days they had already evacuated 15 colonies. No panic, no confusion. No one left behind, sir, came a voice behind him. Torres turned to see Captain Lisa Rodriguez, his logistics officer. The Zilani are asking questions about our withdrawal speed. They seemed surprised. Torres allowed himself a small smile. I bet they are. What kind of questions? They want to know how we're moving so fast. They expected us to take the full 30 days. Some of their officials are wondering if we're planning something. We are planning something, Torres replied. We're planning to be gone. He turned back to the window. Any word from the technical advisors? Rodriguez checked her tablet. The last group extracted from Vorthak space yesterday. The ones embedded with the Nethys military finished their training programs and left this morning. All civilian technical staff have been recalled from Council projects. Good. What about the infrastructure? Phase 1 is complete. All human-designed systems now have remote shutdown capability. Phase 2 begins once we cross the border. Torres nodded. The Council thought they were getting valuable human technology and knowledge as part of the territorial handover. They had no idea that most of it would simply stop working once humans were no longer there to maintain it. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. The alien species that had voted to expel humanity watched with growing bewilderment as the humans left faster and more efficiently than anyone thought possible. On the Vorthak homeworld, Delegate Zexthul observed the human evacuation through his compound eyes. The humans had built a beautiful spaceport there, with technology that made ships land and take off smoother than anything the Vorthak had ever seen. Soon it would be theirs. How many of their technical people are still here? He asked his aide. None, sir. The last human engineer left this morning. Zexthul clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. Excellent. We will run their systems better than they ever did. Schedule the first non-human ship to use their landing system. What Zexthul did not know was that the landing system had been designed by humans specifically for human ships. Without human technicians to modify the settings, other species' ships would find it challenging to use. On the gas world of Nethys Prime, Admiral Veltar floated in his command chamber reviewing reports. The humans had spent 5 years helping to train Nethys pilots in advanced combat techniques. Strange techniques that seemed focused on fighting enemies that moved in unusual patterns. The human instructors have all departed, his aide reported. Our pilots are ready to continue their training without them. Good. Veltar pulsed in satisfaction. We learned much from them. Their knowledge is now ours. What Veltar did not understand was that human combat techniques were designed for specific threats. Without the context of why those techniques existed, they were just elaborate flight patterns that served no real purpose. But it was on the Zilani core worlds that the most significant changes were taking place. For decades, human advisors had worked quietly in the background of Zilani society. They maintained computers, advised on logistics, and helped design defense systems. Most Zilani had barely noticed them. Kethvar walked through the halls of the council building feeling victorious. In just 20 days, the humans would be completely gone. The galaxy would finally be free of their aggressive influence. Sir, his aide Sevtar approached nervously. We're having some technical difficulties. What kind of difficulties? The defense grid around our outer colonies. It keeps going offline. The human technicians who maintained it have all left and our people can't seem to keep it running. Kethvar waved dismissively. Minor growing pains. Our engineers will figure it out. What else could there be to worry about? Sevtar hesitated. Sir, there's something else. The monitoring stations in the outer rim have gone dark. All of them. The human stations. Yes, sir. They transmitted a final message and then shut down completely. We're getting no data from the rim sectors at all. For the first time, Kethvar felt a small flutter of concern. Send our own monitoring ships to replace them. We've tried, sir. But our ships aren't designed for long-range patrol. They can reach the rim, but they can't stay there for extended periods like the human ships could. Kethvar's blue skin darkened slightly. Then we'll build new ships. That will take time, sir. Several years at least, and we'll need to design new life support systems for those distances, new navigation protocols, new— Enough, Kethvar snapped. We managed perfectly well before the humans arrived. We will manage perfectly well after they leave. But privately, he was beginning to wonder exactly what the humans had been doing out there in the dark spaces between stars. Admiral Torres received regular reports from across human space. The withdrawal was going better than planned. More importantly, the various alien species were already beginning to experience problems without human support. Sir, Captain Rodriguez reported, we're getting interesting communications intercepts. The Vorthak are having trouble with their new spaceport. 3 ships have crashed trying to land there. The Nethys are reporting training accidents among their pilots. And the Zilani defense grid has failed completely around 6 outer colonies. Any casualties? Not yet. But it's only been 20 days. Torres nodded grimly. What about our people? Any stragglers? The last transport leaves tomorrow. Everyone will be out with 5 days to spare. And our deep space assets? All monitoring stations have been shut down and abandoned. Early warning networks are offline. The automated defense platforms have been set to inactive status. Torres was quiet for a moment. Those systems had taken decades to build and position. They had been humanity's gift to the galaxy, a protective shield that most aliens never even knew existed. Any word from our scouts in the Outer Rim? Rodriguez's expression grew serious. Yes, sir. And it's not good news. Long-range sensors are detecting movement. Something big is stirring out there. Torres felt a chill run down his spine. How long before it becomes a problem? Unknown, sir. Could be months. Could be years. Without the monitoring network, we won't know until it's much closer. And the Council? Still celebrating our departure. They have no idea what's coming. Torres stared out at the stars. Humanity had spent 50 years building a defensive network around the galaxy. They had watched. They had warned. They had prepared. And now they were being forced to abandon it all because the very people they were protecting had decided they were the threat. "Admiral," Rodriguez said quietly, "there's one more thing. We've been monitoring Council communications. Some of their younger officials are starting to ask questions. They're wondering why we left so easily, why we didn't fight the expulsion order, why we're taking everything with us. And what are their leaders telling them? That humans are cowards. That we ran because we knew we couldn't stand up to the combined Council forces." Torres laughed bitterly. "If only they knew the truth, which is, sir." Torres turned away from the window. "The truth is that we're not running from them. We're running from what's coming, and we're taking our protection with us because they made it clear they don't want it." As the last human transport prepared to leave Council space, automated systems throughout the galaxy quietly shut down. Monitoring stations went dark. Defense networks powered down. Early warning systems stopped their eternal watch. The humans were leaving, just as the Council had demanded. Behind them, they left a galaxy that was about to discover just how dangerous the universe really was. 6 months had passed since the humans left Council space. The great chamber where they had been expelled now buzzed with urgent voices instead of celebration. Emergency lights bathed everything in harsh red, and the usual diplomatic calm had been replaced by barely controlled panic. Kethvar floated above his crystal platform, his blue skin pale with stress. Around him, representatives from dozens of species demanded answers he did not have. The peaceful galaxy they had been so proud of was falling apart. "The outer colonies of Sector 7 have gone silent," reported the Vorthak delegate, its voice grinding like broken machinery. "No response to any communications for 3 days." "Sector 12 is reporting similar problems," added the Nethys representative, its gas sac pulsing worried colors. Their last transmission spoke of strange ships before the signal cut out. Kethvar raised his hands for silence. "We are dealing with pirates or raiders. Nothing more. Our fleets will handle this situation." But even as he spoke, he knew it was not that simple. The reports had been coming in for weeks. Entire star systems going dark, ships disappearing without sending distress calls. And always, the few survivors spoke of the same thing: creatures that moved like living nightmares and ships that seemed to be made of bone and flesh instead of metal. Young Sevtar approached his leader nervously. "Sir, Admiral Thulvan is requesting permission to speak." The chamber fell silent as Admiral Thulvan, the highest military commander in Council space, rose to address them. His normally perfect uniform was wrinkled, and his eyes showed a weariness that had not been there 6 months ago. "Honored delegates," he began, his voice carrying the weight of terrible news. "I must report that we have lost contact with all colonies in the Outer Rim. 17 systems, over 40 billion lives." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Some delegates called him a liar. Others demanded to know how this was possible. The noise was deafening until Kethvar managed to restore order. "How can this be?" Kethvar demanded. "Our fleets are the finest in the galaxy. Our technology is superior. What could possibly—" "The Keth-Dari swarm," Thulvan interrupted, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. The silence that followed was complete. Even the species that required artificial atmospheres seemed to hold their breath. "That is a myth," whispered the Sylvan delegate, its tree-like form swaying with distress. "A children's story to frighten young saplings." "I thought so too," Thulvan replied grimly. "Until 3 days ago when my flagship encountered them directly." He activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. The image that appeared made several delegates recoil in horror. Ships that looked like massive insects filled the screen, their biometal hulls pulsing with alien life. They moved in perfect formation, but not like machines, like a living organism with a single terrible purpose. "My task force consisted of 40 ships," Thulvan continued, "the finest vessels in the Council fleet. We engaged the swarm at the Kepler Nebula, confident in our superior firepower and tactics." The hologram shifted to show the battle. Council ships fired their energy weapons in precise patterns, following centuries of military doctrine. The swarm ship simply absorbed the energy and kept coming. "They don't fight like us," Thulvan explained. "They don't follow our rules of engagement. They don't worry about casualties or strategic retreat. They just attack with everything they have all at once. The recording showed swarm ships swarming over council vessels like insects on prey. Where they touched, the metal seemed to dissolve, consumed by some terrible biological process. Of my 40 ships, 6 escaped, including mine. The rest? Thulvan's voice trailed off. This is impossible, Kethvar protested. Our weapons, our shields, our tactical superiority mean nothing to them, Thulvan finished. They've been studying us, learning our weaknesses. They know exactly how we fight, and they've adapted to counter every strategy in our military manuals. The Vorthak delegate clicked nervously. But where did they come from? How long have they been out there? Thulvan was quiet for a moment. According to the tactical data we recovered, they've been massing in the dark space beyond the rim for decades. Maybe longer, and they would have stayed there contained if not for one thing. What thing? Sevtar asked, though something in his expression suggested he already knew the answer. The monitoring stations went dark 6 months ago. The early warning network stopped functioning. The automated defense platforms that had been keeping them contained were shut down. Thulvan looked directly at Kethvar. All human technology. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The implications hit them like a physical blow. You're saying the humans knew? Kethvar's voice was barely a whisper. I'm saying the humans were the only thing keeping the swarm contained, Thulvan replied. Their aggressive expansion, their military bases, their paranoid patrols of the Outer Rim, it was all directed at this threat. Sevtar stepped forward, his young voice carrying across the chamber. Sir, I've been reviewing the records. Every time the humans requested additional military support for the Rim sectors, we denied it. Every time they warned about strange readings from deep space, we dismissed them. Every time they tried to share their tactical data about fighting unconventional enemies, we called them warmongers. No, Kethvar said, but his voice lacked conviction. They were trying to militarize the galaxy. They were the threat to our peace, were they? Admiral Thulvan activated another display. This one showed a map of the galaxy, with human territories marked in blue and the current swarm advance marked in red. Look at the pattern. Every human colony was positioned to monitor or block swarm infiltration routes. Every human military base was designed to respond to threats from outside the galaxy, not from within. The truth was written clearly in the tactical display. For 50 years, humanity had been building a defensive network specifically designed to contain the swarm, and the Council had forced them to abandon it. We need to contact them, said the Nethys delegate urgently. We need to ask for their help. Kethvar's pride wrestled with his fear. After we expelled them? After we called them aggressors and threw them out of Council space? Yes, Thulvan said firmly. Because right now they're the only ones who know how to fight this enemy. Sevtar activated his personal communicator. I'm trying to reach human space now. He worked for several minutes, his expression growing more frustrated. Sir, I can't get through. All the normal communication channels to human space are blocked or encrypted. Try the emergency frequencies, Kethvar ordered. I am. Sir, nothing. It's like human space has gone completely dark. Admiral Thulvan nodded grimly. That's because they have. Our intelligence reports suggest that humans have withdrawn to previously unknown sectors. They've disappeared entirely from all our sensor networks. But that's impossible, protested the Vorthak delegate. You can't hide entire star systems. Apparently you can if you know how, Thulvan replied. And humans have always been better at military technology than they let on. A new alarm began sounding through the chamber. A communications officer rushed in and whispered urgently to Admiral Thulvan. The Admiral's face went pale. What is it? Kethvar demanded. The swarm has broken through our defensive line at Centauri. They're advancing directly toward the core worlds. At their current speed, they'll reach the outer edges of Council space within days. The chamber erupted in panic. Delegates began shouting orders to evacuate their homeworlds. Others demanded immediate military action. A few simply stared in shock at the displays showing the relentless advance of the alien threat. Above the chaos, Kethvar's voice rang out. Send a message on all frequencies. Humanitarian emergency code. Tell the humans we need their help. Tell them we're sorry. Tell them anything, but make them respond. Sevtar worked frantically at his console. After several minutes, he looked up with despair in his eyes. Sir, I'm getting a response. The chamber fell silent. What do they say? Kethvar asked. Sevtar's voice was barely audible. Nothing, sir. The message just bounces back with an automated response. This frequency is no longer monitored. Council species are not recognized as authorized contacts. The silence that followed was broken only by the steady alarm indicating that somewhere in the galaxy, another world had gone dark. The humans were gone. The swarm was coming, and the Council was finally beginning to understand the true cost of their decision. 1 year after the humans left, the Galactic Council no longer existed as anything more than a desperate alliance of survivors. The great chamber where humanity had been expelled was now a refugee coordination center, filled with the displaced populations of 100 conquered worlds. Kethvar stood before a tactical display that showed the grim reality of their situation. Red markers indicated swarm-controlled territory, which now covered nearly half the galaxy. Yellow markers showed contested areas where fighting continued. The small patches of green that represented safe Council space grew smaller every day. Status. Report, he said wearily to Admiral Thulvan. The military commander looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 12 months. His uniform was patched and worn, and dark circles ringed his eyes. We've lost the Vega system. The Arcturus colonies have been evacuated. Our defensive line is falling back to the inner core worlds. How many ships do we have left? 300. Maybe less. The swarm doesn't just destroy our vessels, they convert them. Every ship we lose becomes part of their fleet. Kethvar closed his eyes. When this started, the Council had commanded over 10,000 warships. The most powerful military force in the galaxy's recorded history. It had been swept aside like debris. Young Sevtar approached with another report. He was no longer young, really. The stress of the past year had marked him, and his hands shook as he held his datapad. Sir, we've completed the analysis of the captured swarm bioship. What did we learn? Nothing good. Their technology is completely biological, but it's been engineered to counter our specific weapons and tactics. It's like they've been studying our military for decades and designing the perfect counter-strategy. Kethvar felt a chill run through him. How is that possible? Sevtar hesitated before answering. Sir, we found data cores in the wreckage. Heavily encrypted. But our best cryptographers managed to break some of the code. The swarm has been monitoring Council space for over a century. They have detailed files on every species, every ship design, every military tactic we've ever used. But not human tactics, Thulvan said quietly. No, sir. The human files are much smaller and mostly marked as unknown threat assessment. It appears they never successfully penetrated human space or studied human military doctrine. The implication hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. The swarm had spent a century learning how to defeat the Council. But they had never learned how to defeat the humans. Sir, a communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the Kepler system. It's strange. Kethvar straightened. What kind of strange? It's human, sir, but not directed at us. It appears to be an internal military communication that we intercepted by accident. The chamber fell silent. For a year, they had been trying to contact human space with no success. Human territories had seemingly vanished from all sensor networks. And now suddenly a human message. Put it through the speakers, Kethvar ordered. The voice that emerged was crisp and professional, speaking in the clipped tones of military efficiency. Admiral Chen, this is Colonel Harrison reporting from Forward Base Omega. The Devourer scout fleet has been engaged and destroyed. Casualties minimal. However, long-range sensors indicate the main Devourer force is accelerating their approach. Estimated time to contact 18 months. Another voice responded, this one female and somehow familiar. Understood, Colonel. Continue monitoring. All fleet elements are to maintain radio silence except for emergency protocols. The Council species cannot be allowed to discover our position until the operation is complete. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. Admiral Chen, Sevtar whispered. That was Ambassador Chen. Sarah Chen. Kethvar's mind raced. Did they say Devourer fleet? What are Devourers? Admiral Thulvan was studying the tactical display with new eyes. Sir, I think we need to reconsider everything we thought we knew about this situation. Before Kethvar could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. A technician called out in panic. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Large formation approaching from the outer system. Swarm? Thulvan demanded. No, sir. The energy signatures are... They're human. On the main display, a fleet of ships materialized from the darkness of space. But these were not the simple, functional vessels the Council remembered. These were massive warships, bristling with weapons and armor that seemed to bend light around them. They moved with the precision of a military force that had been fighting a war for years. Incoming transmission, the communications officer reported, his voice shaking. The image that appeared on the screen was indeed Admiral Sarah Chen, but she looked nothing like the quiet diplomat who had been expelled from this very chamber. Her uniform was black and gray, marked with symbols the Council had never seen. Her expression was harder, colder, and her eyes held the weight of terrible knowledge. Council species, she said without preamble. I am Admiral Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. We are not here to rescue you. Kethvar found his voice. Admiral, we need your help. The swarm has overrun half our territory. Billions are dead. Surely you can... The swarm is not your real problem, Chen interrupted. They are refugees fleeing from something far worse. Something that you have never encountered because we have been holding it back for the past 2 centuries. The display shifted to show a star map that extended far beyond the galaxy's rim. Points of red light moved across it like a plague spreading through the darkness. The Devourers, Chen continued, a force that consumes entire galaxies. They have destroyed 17 galactic civilizations that we know of. The swarm you are fighting was their advanced scouts sent to soften up our galaxy before the main force arrived. But why didn't you tell us? Sev Tar burst out. Why didn't you warn us? Chen's expression didn't change. We tried. For 50 years we tried. Every time we presented evidence, you called it human paranoia. Every time we requested additional defensive resources, you accused us of militarism. Every time we warned about threats from beyond the rim, you dismissed us as warmongers. The truth hit the chamber like a physical blow. The humans had never been the aggressor. They had been the guardians, holding back a threat too terrible for the Council to even imagine. The swarm incursion began when you forced us to abandon our containment protocols, Chen continued. When our monitoring stations went dark, the Devourers took it as a signal that the galaxy was ready for harvest. The swarm was released to begin the softening process. But you can help us fight them, Kethavar pleaded. Your technology, your weapons, are committed to fighting the real enemy, Chen replied. The Devourer main fleet will arrive in 18 months. When they do, they will finish what the swarm started. Every living thing in this galaxy will be consumed unless we stop them. Then work with us. Together we can... You made your choice when you expelled us from the Council, Chen said flatly. You decided that our protection was worth less than your political comfort. Now you will live with the consequences of that decision. Admiral Thulvan stepped forward. Admiral, surely you don't mean to abandon billions of innocent lives because of a political dispute? For the first time, Chen's expression softened slightly. We are not abandoning them. We are prioritizing the survival of the galaxy. Every ship we send to fight the swarm is one less ship available to fight the Devourers. Every human life lost in your war is one less defender against the real threat. The display changed again, showing the human fleet beginning to withdraw. Wait, Kethvar called out desperately. At least tell us how to fight them. Give us the tactical data. Chen paused. Very well. One piece of free advice: the swarm can be beaten, but not with conventional tactics. They adapt to patterns, but they cannot adapt to chaos. Stop fighting like civilized species and start fighting like humans. What does that mean? It means you need to become what you accused us of being. Aggressive, unpredictable, willing to do whatever it takes to win. Chen's image began to fade. Good luck. You will need it. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in silence. Outside, the human fleet vanished back into hyperspace as suddenly as it had appeared. Kethavar stared at the empty space where the ships had been. They're really gone. Yes, sir, Sevtar confirmed quietly. And we're on our own. Admiral Thulvan studied the tactical data with new understanding. Not entirely. They gave us information. We know the swarm can be beaten now. We just have to learn how to fight dirty. Like humans, Kethavar said bitterly. Like humans, Thulvan agreed. Maybe it's time we admitted they were right about more than just the threats from beyond the rim. But even as they began planning their new strategy, everyone in the chamber knew the truth. The humans were fighting a war to save the entire galaxy, while the Council struggled to save themselves, and they were fighting it alone, because the very people they were protecting had cast them out when they needed them most. The price of prejudice was becoming clear. The question was whether anyone would survive to learn from it. 2 years after humanity's expulsion, the galaxy was a graveyard. 3/4 of Council space lay in ruins, consumed by the swarm or evacuated ahead of their advance. The survivors huddled in a handful of core worlds, their once mighty civilization reduced to a desperate refugee camp among the stars. Admiral Thulvan stood in what had once been the council chamber, now converted into a military command center. The elegant diplomatic furnishings had been replaced with tactical displays and communication arrays. Where representatives of dozens of species had once debated policy, a handful of tired military officers tracked the final stages of their civilization's collapse. "Final casualty reports," he said to his aide, knowing the numbers would be devastating. 67 billion confirmed dead, came the reply. Another 20 billion missing and presumed consumed. Total fleet strength down to 43 ships. Thulvan closed his eyes. 2 years ago, the Council had commanded a population of over 200 billion, across thousands of worlds. Now they were reduced to a tiny fraction of their former glory, clinging to life in a handful of heavily defended systems. "Any word from the outer colonies?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Nothing, sir. The last transmission from New Zelani was 3 days ago. Just static now." Kethavar approached, his once proud bearing reduced to a shuffle. The Zelani leader looked ancient, his blue skin pale and mottled with stress. "Admiral, we need to discuss evacuation plans for the core worlds." "There's nowhere left to evacuate to," Thulvan replied quietly. "This is our last stand. Then we're all going to die." The simple statement hung in the air like a death sentence. After 2 years of fighting, learning, and adapting, they had managed to slow the swarm advance, but they could not stop it. Following human advice, they had abandoned their civilized tactics and embraced chaos. It had worked to a degree, but there were simply too many swarm ships and too few council defenders. "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we're detecting massive energy signatures at the Galactic Rim. Something's happening out there." Thulvan moved to the sensor station. The display showed the outer edge of the galaxy, where human space had once been. Massive energy discharges lit up the darkness like a cosmic storm. "What could cause readings like that?" Kethavar asked. "War," Thulvan replied grimly. "A very big war." As they watched, the energy signatures intensified. Whatever was happening in the darkness beyond the rim was far larger than any battle the Council had ever witnessed. The scale was almost incomprehensible. "Sir," the communications officer said urgently, "I'm picking up transmissions. Human military frequencies. Put them through." The voices that emerged from the speakers were tense with combat stress. "Echo Squadron, fall back to position 7. The Devourer flagship is breaking through our line. Need immediate support at grid reference 12. We've got multiple breacher ships incoming. Admiral Chen, this is Captain Morrison. The Nemesis is taking heavy fire. We can't hold this position much longer." And then, cutting through the chaos, a voice they recognized. "All ships. This is Admiral Chen. Execute Protocol Omega, I repeat. Execute Protocol Omega. We're going to ram the bastards." The transmission cut to static. Thulvan stared at the display in shock. "They're fighting something out there. Something big enough to threaten their entire fleet." "The Devourers," Kethavar whispered. "The real enemy they spoke of." For several hours, the energy signatures continued to flare at the Galactic Rim. The Council Command Center monitored in stunned silence as humanity fought a battle they could barely comprehend. And then suddenly everything went quiet. "What happened?" Thulvan demanded. "Unknown, sir. All readings have dropped to normal background levels." They waited in tense silence for any sign of what had occurred. Hours passed with no word from the Rim. Then, just as they were beginning to assume the worst, a new set of contacts appeared on their sensors. "Ships approaching from the Rim," the sensor operator reported. "Energy signatures are human." The fleet that emerged from hyperspace was battered and scarred. Many ships showed signs of terrible damage, patched with emergency repairs and jury-rigged systems. But they were moving under their own power, and they were heading directly for the core worlds. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. The face that appeared on the screen was Admiral Sarah Chen, but she looked like she had been through hell. Her uniform was torn and stained. Her face was marked with cuts and burns, and her eyes held the exhausted determination of someone who had faced the impossible and somehow survived. "Council species," she said, her voice hoarse with fatigue. "This is Admiral Chen. The immediate threat has been neutralized." "What happened out there?" Thulvan asked. "We stopped them," Chen replied simply. "The Devourer main fleet, the advanced scouts, all of it. They won't be coming back." The command center erupted in confused voices. How was it possible? How had the humans defeated an enemy that could destroy entire galaxies? At what cost? Kethvar asked quietly. Chen's expression grew somber. 70% of our fleet. Most of our colonies. Billions of our people, she paused. Including myself in about 6 hours when the radiation poisoning from my ship's damaged core finally kills me. The council chamber fell silent. The scope of human sacrifice was staggering. "Why?" Sevtar asked, stepping forward. "Why did you fight for us after we threw you out? Why did you save people who had rejected you?" Chen smiled sadly. "Because that's what humans do. We protect people even when they don't want to be protected, even when they hate us for it, even when it costs us everything." "But the swarm," Thulvan protested. "They're still out there. They still control half the galaxy." "No," Chen replied. "They're not. Without the Devourer command structure controlling them, the swarm ships are reverting to their base programming. In another few days, they'll simply shut down and drift. Your people can reclaim their worlds." The magnitude of what she was saying slowly sank in. The war was over. The galaxy was saved. "But the cost, Admiral," Kethvar said, his voice breaking. "We owe you an apology. We owe your entire species an apology. We were wrong about everything." "Yes, you were," Chen agreed without malice. "But you learned. In the end, you learned to fight like us, chaotic, unpredictable, willing to sacrifice everything for what matters. That's why some of you survived." "What happens now?" Sevtar asked. Chen's image was beginning to flicker as her ship's systems failed. "Now you rebuild. You learn from your mistakes, and you remember that sometimes the people you think are your enemies are actually your guardians." "Will humanity return to the Council?" Chen shook her head. "There aren't enough of us left to matter. Besides, you don't need us anymore. You've learned the most important lesson, which is that peace isn't the absence of violence. Peace is violence directed at the right targets." Chen's voice was growing weaker. "The universe is dangerous. There are always threats lurking in the dark. Someone has to watch for them. Someone has to be ready to fight them. That someone is you now." The transmission began to break up as her ship's power failed. "Admiral," Kethvar called out desperately, "how do we thank you? How do we honor what you've done?" Chen's final words came through clearly despite the static. "Remember us. Remember what we died for, and never make the same mistake again." The transmission ended. On the sensors, the human ships began moving away from Council space. Those few vessels that remained carrying the survivors of humanity's greatest sacrifice. Admiral Thulvan stood in the silence that followed, looking at the tactical display that showed a galaxy slowly returning to peace. The cost had been unimaginable. 2 species had paid the ultimate price, but life would continue. "Sir," his aide asked quietly, "what are your orders?" Thulvan straightened his shoulders. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the remnants of humanity were beginning their long journey to rebuild their civilization. They would probably never return to Council space, but their sacrifice would not be forgotten. "Begin the reconstruction," he ordered, "and establish monitoring stations at the Galactic Rim. We watch the dark now. We keep the peace through strength, and we never ever forget who taught us how. And if we encounter other aggressive species, other threats to galactic peace..." Thulvan was quiet for a moment, thinking of a small human woman who had warned them of dangers they refused to see. "We listen," he said finally. "We listen very carefully. Because sometimes the species that scares you the most is the one trying to save your life." The galaxy would remember. The Council would rebuild. And in the dark spaces between stars, new watchers would stand guard, following the example set by a species that had died to protect those who had cast them out. Humanity was gone, but their legacy would endure forever in the lessons they had taught through their sacrifice. The Council had paid the price. But somehow, impossibly, they had survived to learn from it.